Good, wherever you happen to be. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. So I left our Twitch alerts running to make sure our Keep Alive with Twitch and everything was working and stable and reconnect. And so far, so good. I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty happy with it. Pretty happy. All right. Let's do this. I'm just going to pull up chat real quick. I really need to get a starting soon main board. I really need to do that. It's on my list of things. The other thing that I would like to do is I have this teleprompter for recording my YouTube videos, and what I'd like to do is get Twitch on the teleprompter, Twitch chat, so I can look at you guys and read at the same time. I think that would be really cool. I almost need to buy a tablet just to sit there, though, just to do that, because it's kind of a pain to get in and out. Are we ready to cover the news? Are we ready? Are we ready? All right. Well then, let's get started. We have a lot of things to go over today. It's going to be pretty good. We have a bit of cloud news. Though to be honest, there wasn't a ton of cloud news. Azure actually probably had the most cloud news that I saw this week on some of the stuff, and some of this may have been last week's, but I don't follow Azure as closely. Although I am learning Azure, so I'm going to be covering it maybe a little bit better. I might actually know what some of their services are called, and yeah. So I think I have the most to cover there. Then we have some stuff in AI to cover. There's some articles around what's happening with generative AI and all that. So we'll cover that. Then I have just some interesting articles that I found that I'll share with you guys. Just some interesting takes. One is from Kelsey Hightower, and then we're going to end. Nobody gave me a article to talk with you all about, so I'm going to talk about Rust for a little bit. I actually think at this point I am going to make a video on the Rust community. I'm not even sure what I'm going to make it on, but I feel like I need to speak out on it at least a little, and I'm going to cover that at the end. We're going to review the latest drama in the Rust community, and yeah. So that will be it. So let's jump into maybe the biggest security vulnerability you didn't know about till today. And that's going to be CVE 2023-28131. And this is the auth session redirect proxy for social sign-ins. So this is an OAuth bug. And so it's kind of scary because it's handling authentication or authentication, not authorization. It's handling authentication, which is always really scary when you have a 9.6 in the way of your authentication. Now, this is in reportedly a lot of OAuth implementations. According to this, hundreds, if you take this, hundreds of companies use impacted framework. So yeah. Yep. Okay. So if you use this, definitely check it out. There is a mitigation. I don't believe. Yes, thank you. So I'm gonna post this. It has a mitigation in it. So if this is striking you with the OAuth, go ahead and check this out for the mitigation. I have not actually read into the mitigation of it or the impact of it all, but that is the mitigation. I don't know how it happens, but it is a proxy redirect on your OAuth. So yeah. In certain cases, it allows malicious actors to perform actions on behalf of a compromised user in Facebook, Google, Twitter, and online platforms. Pretty scary stuff. Yeah. Good evening, Russell. I have some pretty fun stuff planned. We're just touching on a few security topics here. As soon as we're done with security here, we have a little bit of cloud, then we have a little bit of AI stuff to cover, and then we have a little bit of Kubernetes and open source stuff. And then we're going to talk about Rust, unless you have a thing for me to review. I have some stuff pulled up on Rust. There was a little bit more drama this week about Rust, and I thought we might just go over some of that, and I'll do my thoughts. I think I might actually make a video, like I myself am not, I don't do anything on the Rust community, but I do feel like I'm part of the Rust community. I try to help people get on board with Rust, so while I'm not part of the Rust community, I am kind of part of the Rust community, so I take it a little bit seriously. So we'll cover that. I don't know if you, but yeah, if you have anything that you think I'm missing, please link it and we'll cover that. All right. So yeah, I would read this if you use OAuth. There we go. Yeah, Windows XP activation. I did not see bit.io. I will pull that up. In one of the intermissions, I'll pull that up and review really quickly. That's pretty cool. Bit.io is serverless. What do they mean by serverless? We'll get into that. That's cool. I actually like to have those things because there's new services that people could use. This would be a great place to go over. Hey, there's a new service. So I'm going to throw that in our cloud news right after the security. We'll cover it. You'll learn about it with me. But I think it would be good to cover that type of stuff in this segment. Windows XP activation. Yeah. So a group actually figured out the activation algorithm for Windows XP. So it actually works. So even after Microsoft is shutting down its activation servers, it actually works offline. Now, I don't know that this is particularly legal, so I'm not recommending you do that or use it per se. But it is out there. I thought it was pretty cool. I feel like Windows, when they shut down something like this, they should publish their activation algorithm. They don't, and they don't listen to me. But I feel like that's what they should do. It seems like it happened anyways. Oops, I just copied and pasted the title, not the the link. So I found that pretty cool. And that's it for Hey, Mr. Elfman, welcome. I think this is the first time you have joined our news section. Every Sunday, I cover the news. I cover open source news, I cover the cloud news, and pretty much software engineering news as a whole. Yeah, I try to keep it to about an hour, but that's what the show is. We have a new cloud offering service that I have never seen about before. We're gonna look at. Rust is at risk. We're going to talk about Rust because I feel like it's at a point where I need to talk about it. I didn't talk about it at the last one. I did talk about it in the live stream, but I didn't make a video, and I think I'm going to be making a video. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. Rust is always on a verge of a community collapse. They have more of them than. Yeah, I mean, you had your entire moderation team leave a year ago. I think it was about a year ago. Don't quote me on that exactly. Where the entire moderation team said basically that the core team was unmoderated. I'm not sure the word I'm trying to use, but you get the point. I honestly think that there's a bunch of, you know what, we're going to get into that. Let's get into the server, and then we're going to talk about this at the end. So I have some thoughts on it. And we'll talk about it. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. Love to hear. Your guys' thoughts are probably pretty good. Makes good content. You got to stick around. All right. It's bad content. I'm not sure. It's content though. That's for sure. All right. This was just brought to my attention, bit.io, as a new cloud platform. This provides Postgres as a service, per what I have just learned. We're looking at the pricing page because that's the first thing I look at when I try something. 3 gigabytes of max storage for 3 databases. That's pretty good. That's like 9. If you're sharding, that's like 9 gigs total. But don't shard that. That sounds horrible. So the pricing looks pretty interesting. This is kind of interesting. 100 gigabyte soft storage limit. So their databases only go up to 100 gig. And then basically at $5 you get 100 gigs, and that's it. And then basically it's more operations. I like that they give you the max additional spend, like for the more operations that you do, so you can do more operations on it. But that's a little interesting that they have a hard limit of 100 gigs. Honestly, that's more than most people need, but it is a little bit of a worrisome. Now, that might just be because they're just starting. I would love to get an interview with them. I'll email them to see if they'd like to have an interview. I like interviewing these companies, see what they're doing, what they're trying to do. Pulls a Google and changes pricing on you. It's possible, and sometimes you don't know what it's going to cost you. And some of the best way to do it is get people to use it, and then you can really adjust your pricing then. And I mean, I think that's fair. They're launching something new. They probably have some way to optimize. I don't know what they mean by row operations. Is that seeking through the rows? So if you do like an unindexed select, and it has to go through each of the rows, like does each row look query? Is that an operation? It might be easy to get 50 billion row operations. And it would mean that you have to be really careful with your indexing here. Really careful, because a bad index is actually going to cost you money, not just performance. Although, I guess usually it costs you money anyways because you have to scale before you would anyways. So, but this is cool. This is cool. I think storage is really difficult, and something people get wrong a lot of the time. So, stateful applications. Let's jump into Microsoft. Now, we're going to jump into Azure because it's cloud news here. But I wanted to point out something that I saw pretty interesting was this .NET 8, which is in preview 4, and I don't follow .NET at all, almost. I don't even know what C# is. I do know what C# is, and I do know what the Roslyn compiler was because that was actually really cool and one of the things that helped me learn to code. But I don't really do anything in this ecosystem, but it looks pretty cool because they're boosting Blazor with WebAssembly. With like Blazor's getting like server-side rendering and stuff that you would think is in Next.js, but this is in a WebAssembly framework. So I haven't used Blazor. I saw it a couple, like 2 months ago. And it looks pretty cool, though, because you get to write everything in code and you get to scrap quite a bit of the things that I hate about front-end development. So it's kind of interesting. If it was in Rust, I would be more piqued. Yeah, and Mr. Elfman, you're 100% right. A lot of people say a lot of good things about .NET. Honestly, a lot of my friends, even some of the ones that work at Grafana now, have used and liked .NET. So it's you can't go wrong with it, I don't think. Well, you can because there's Rust, but we're moving on. All right, so some cool things that actually came through in Azure. I do like, I am watching the WebAssembly. This is why I bring it up. I am watching the WebAssembly stuff. We've done a little WebAssembly on stream. We thought we had a problem with WebAssembly. It really was a problem with me and my code, but is there Rust? Well, there's going to be a new, there is going to be Rust, but I think it's going to just be R++ or R+. Maybe we won't do the plus. That has a little bit of negative connotation nowadays. We'll do R+. And you can't do R because there's already a language called R. We'll figure it out, but there will be Rust. There will be. Krabby minus. Oh, that's pretty. Except difficult to say. I like it. Krabby minus. All right. Transforming containerized applications with Azure Container Storage. I think this is a big deal. One of the hardest things to do in Kubernetes and containers is stateful applications. People don't understand stateful sets. They don't understand the ordinal sets. They don't understand how they restart, how they don't restart, how the persistent volume claims are handled underneath. It's actually kind of difficult. And I haven't seen a really good solution out there for this yet. But this looks like it's taking a crack at that exact problem. So if you're in Azure, this is something that might be interesting, especially if you run your own stateful application. Not everything is stateless. Databases are a prime case of that. You can even have stateful caches. So like, if things expire after a set amount of time and it restarts, it could actually be good to have that as stateful, although you don't need to have it as stateful. But there are a decent number of stateful applications, and if that's you, this actually looks pretty good. So basically, this is trying to provide that seamless interface between container storage, Kubernetes, and the cloud provider. So yeah, anyways, I'm going to leave a link to this because if that's you, I think this is pretty interesting. I think it's also one of those things that really is still the Wild West out there. And yeah, so basically you have your backing storage, and your container storage pool, and it kind of handles all of that for you, or at least that's the idea. It's in preview, so, I'm not sure. I'm excited about it, though. I think that this is cool. It's going to make running something like Kafka in Azure a lot easier. If that's what you want to do, the majority of the reason to have a managed Kafka thing is because of the storage. Kafka itself isn't really difficult to run. So I'm very excited about this. Sorry, I'm taking more time than I need to. I think it's very interesting. Microsoft Fabric. I think it should be Azure Fabric, but yeah. Anyways, data analysis for the era of AI. Very. Does it pick the right underlying storage? That's actually a really good question. I haven't used it yet, and I'm not a big Azure nerd. I am learning though. I have an Azure account now. I am learning Azure stuff. But yeah, Azure Container Storage components include a storage pool, which is a collection of storage resources grouped and represented as a unified storage entity in the AKS cluster. So what this means to me is like you can make a storage pool and expose it as one storage entity in AKS, the Azure Kubernetes service. And then you have a data service layer responsible for replication and encryption and other add-ons. So basically, just making sure that you have encryption through the whole pipeline of your data, and then basically you have the protocol layer to expose the provisioning. That I don't know. Can it switch your data over when it? They don't say anything about that. The cross cluster recovery and observability is an interesting one. Also, fault tolerance and disaster recovery I think would be another interesting topic to dig more into here. There is this technical blog post down here. I already sent you the link. You can go check that out. I think that it's definitely worth looking more into. So Microsoft Fabric, it's more than just a shared interface, but yes, it's somewhat. So part of it is allowed. Part of it allows it to marry itself successfully to the stateful pods. So when you're talking about persistent volume claims, one of the things people have a difficulty with is when you're talking about a stateful set, it's going to be tied to a very specific machine or storage pool. And one of the things that can be difficult is if that machine dies, where do you spin it up? Because it's actually looking for that machine, and maybe now it's out of the pool or the rotation, and you gotta remove it from the thing. It can be very complicated. If they handle that very seamlessly, where they can then attach that storage to another device and trick Kubernetes into starting on that one and say, no, the storage pool is over here. I think there's a lot of things that you could do really cleanly there. All right. The Microsoft Fabric. It's basically just an analysis. They really like the name Fabric. Yes, they do. This is not the first time that I've seen Fabric. I don't remember if it was the Kubernetes competitor or if it was their. I want to say that it was also the name of their API gateway, maybe. Yeah, Service Fabric. Was that their API gateway? I always assumed it was. They like weaving. Anyways, this is all about analytics for your AI stuff in Azure. Supposedly, they've made it pretty easy to gather a lot of analytics from pretty much every system in Azure. So Fabric is a complete analytics platform. So yeah, I think they're trying to make that. Oh, it was container orchestration. I always thought service. I knew what you were talking about, and I always saw Service Fabric, and I always thought API Gateway. I mean, obviously I was wrong and I never used it, but yeah. But yeah, it looks like it's to kind of tie together all your different teams that do data analysis, whether it's your business intelligence or your data warehousing people, and give you basically one purview into that data. So I think that's a powerful tool. I don't know about Microsoft Fabric per se, but that type of tool can be very powerful. There's a lot of caveats on how it will work. All of these things are in preview, how much it will cost, and things like that. But I think it can be very powerful. All right, transforming containerized applications with Azure. We already covered this one. Already covered. All right, public preview. Support for WebSocket APIs in Azure API Management Self-Hosted Gateway. We talked about the self-hosted gateway. None of us like self-hosted Azure stuff, but they do support WebSockets now in it. So if you've been needing that, it's available now. The Azure API Management API Center is now in public preview. So this allows you to manage your APIs. I was gonna go more into API Gateway, but yeah, itself. The API Center is now in public preview. If you've been wanting to use it, if you want to get your hands on it, now's the time. Another public preview is the JSON schema support in Azure Event Hub schema registry for Kafka applications. So basically, yeah, JSON schema is supported. Not much more to say about that. Let's move on to GCP. GCP had a large week. Vertex AI embeddings for text grounded LLMs made easy. I think this is a good read. They basically didn't have much going on at all. And so this is what they came up with. But it's actually a pretty good one, because if you are trying to get your company to have a chatbot that knows about your product and, future clients can actually interact with and talk with, these are actually really, really important things. So AI hallucinations are fun, but they're not fun if it's your chatbot that's hallucinating. If you don't know what a hallucination is in an AI, it's basically where they come up with some weird crap. And you're like, that's not my documentation at all. And yet that's what they came up with. That's AI hallucinations. Anyways, this is an article, and it's talking mostly about Vertex AI and how to do these things with Vertex AI. But this is an important thing for anybody that's attempting to use these and leveraging them. Send me some stuff. I don't. I'm not as good at following Azure. I didn't watch all of Azure Build, honestly. I've been watching their blog posts that they've released, and so they haven't. If they didn't release a blog post on it, I didn't have the time this last week to watch Azure Microsoft Build. So I might have. I have probably missed some stuff. That's probably on me. I'll go ahead and cover Azure or AWS. Then if you have some things that you think are interesting for people, let me know. All right, there were only a few things. Yeah, maybe I'll cover it next week. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff, but I tried to wade through the stuff that was released. So yeah, and no, I didn't get to watch all the videos, unfortunately. There wasn't a whole lot of stuff with AWS. AWS had some updates to Postgres. They launched a few new instances types in a few new regions. So if there's more Graviton 2 based Amazon instances and a couple things like that. Nothing that stood out too much, except for there is now the geo-partial capabilities now generally available with security updates and more use case. So SageMaker is their Kubeflow-esque type product. That's your one-stop shop for machine learning. So it's definitely something to look into. So they added some features to that. They also announced an improved end-to-end latencies for Amazon EventBridge event buses. So quite a bit improved. I think it was like 85%, 80%. Up to 80% faster, and there's nothing that you need to do. So if you've been using EventBridge, you could be getting events up to 80% faster. Which is pretty amazing. And they measured it by ingest to first invocation attempt. So I think that this is pretty amazing. And yeah, there's nothing you have to do. If you're using it, it's already working for you. And that's it for my cloud news. Now, thank you so much, Russell, for finding some of those things for me. I really appreciate it. I did probably miss some of Microsoft Build stuff. I know that they went over way more. I did exclude some stuff that wasn't cloud specific, that was maybe just more like some of their AI stuff, which just really seemed to be wrapping ChatGPT. I did skip some of those because we've already covered ChatGPT, and they didn't seem to be really new. So, but I'm sure that I missed stuff. Like I said, I didn't get to watch all of Azure Build. All right, now we have our new section today. We have our AI news. I found some, we've been getting enough AI stuff. I thought I'd make a section of it until we don't need to have it anymore, for one reason or another, or it gets to be too big and it's its own whole show. Anyways, let's talk about the good, then we'll talk about the bad, then we'll slide right on to the ugly of AI. All right, so Hugging Face is at it again. I really have liked a lot of their work. I have learned a lot from their tutorials. So all of my AI learning has been from Hugging Face and PyTorch. Those two groups are fantastic. And they release a lot of stuff. This is very interesting. If you're looking at generative AI, if you're wanting to understand it better itself, this is getting very, very deep. If you look in the LLM int 8 and int 4, that the 4-bit, it's getting very deep. I like understanding things. That's why I do a lot of the things the hardest way. I like understanding things at a deep level and why and how they work. And basically, this was work to take a 65 billion parameter model and train it on a single 84 gigabyte GPU. Now, that's still a larger GPU than I have, but that's actually attainable to a consumer. You can have 2 GPUs, NVIDIA. Now you're talking about $2,000 worth of GPUs because you got to get the 3080s, I think, or the 4080s. But it's obtainable. It's obtainable. You can do that. And it's a 65 billion parameter. Like, that is amazing. Now, it is only 4-bit instead of this 8-bit, which 8-bit performs a little bit better. But yeah, it also takes like a whole fleet of computers. So really cool. And I learned a lot from these papers. So there's blog posts, there's papers. The blog posts are a little bit more consumable if you're just new to this stuff. But then there's all these resources here. And I really think that you should look over them if you're interested in learning this stuff. Did I post it? Yes, I did. Okay. I think LLMs will be more focused. That's the next thing to come into it. I think, our things on like, hey, let's have an LLM that does documentation, that does AI-powered driven documentation, maybe even documentation testing and things like that, API documentation and things like that. And I actually think to do those well, you don't want them to be trained on everything. honestly, I think that actually is maybe counterintuitive. But to hyper focus on something and be really good at a thing, I think that you're going to start getting more into, not necessarily like a laser focus. You still want some breadth there, but I think you're going to see more about actually how you train it with what data. I think there's going to be a lot more focus on that in the future, and I think there's also going to be a lot of this focus on, hey, can we actually make training this accessible? Yeah. I think NVIDIA should pivot more to cloud enterprise. I honestly do. That's I agree, Russell. That's the whole point. Like, and I've been saying this before. Google said they have no moat, and ChatGPT. When I question ChatGPT's evaluation, because honestly, yeah, the number of parameters I don't think is, and the data is going to get much harder to get. You're talking about places like Twitter and Facebook who are going to start charging you for their data or their customers' data. I actually think that if you're a company and you charge AIs to to use you, you should pay your content creators part of that, which would be your people, and they should be able to opt in. But all right, now this was cool. Let's talk about some other newsworthy stuff in AI. I found this article about Freshworks. The CEO of software firm Freshworks says his workers are using OpenAI's ChatGPT to write code. He goes on to say that tasks that usually took 8 to 10 weeks were completed in a few days. I find this extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. If it usually took 8 to 10 weeks, it means you knew what you were doing because it's a task that you usually do. How does a generative AI reduce that to a few days? And if it is something that you do often, should you not be sharing that code, making it a library for reuse? I don't understand. Like, this makes so many questions pop up into my head that I'm just not entirely sure exactly what they're saying. I would love to sit down with Freshworks. I will email him. I email like 2 people every single week to see if they would love to have a conversation with me live with you guys. Nobody has said yes to this yet, but when they do, it'll be here. And I'll let you guys know ahead of time. But I don't understand how it's reducing 8 to 10 weeks, and what they go on to with their talk with Fortune is very vague. It's very vague. I wasn't able to glean the usefulness. And on top of that, we've already seen the statistics. I showed those to you, where developers that use AI write worse code that has more bugs and more security vulnerabilities. This is just research. It has bled on to other things. A lawyer used ChatGPT for a legal filing, and Chatbot cited non-existent cases it just made up. And this guy is actually in a lot of trouble now. So yeah. But again, I found another article that says AI is doing the work of 250 people at an energy company. Now, this is your all's favorite Boris Johnson. I actually recognized him. I know that that's going to get somebody heated. Please keep it civil. Keep it civil. But so yeah. I got him off screen, okay? I got him off. I got him off before you asked. Well before you asked. Okay? I literally I literally knew you'd get upset. I was like, this article doesn't even have that much useful stuff, except like for some reason it has Boris Johnson on it. For some reason, it's about AI. And the picture has Boris Johnson in front of whatever. It was fantastic. So we have a lot of law, like regulation being talked about. A lot of regulators are talking to these big companies. There's a group of people that are pushing that the companies creating AIs shouldn't be part of the people making the regulations. And I think the real problem that we're suffering from here is if the people that are really driving the AI aren't part of the regulation, the people that are in charge know nothing about AI. There would be no way for them to regulate it. It would be a disaster. It would be worse than some of the other regulations that we have that are just bad from a lack of understanding. So I don't know the right way to do it because I think it's a hard problem. You know, I couldn't even tell you that I would know the exact right way to do it. I think you need to start with some hyper-focused areas and move on from there. But yeah, I think it could be difficult. Another company restricts using ChatGPT. So there are both sides of this case, from people saying that it's doing the work of 250 people, to people saying you can't use it, to people getting lawyers in trouble. Like he could lose his license from this. So I've been watching all of them. I don't know. We're going to see. We're going to see how this all pans out. I kind of feel like I don't know. I almost feel like if it doesn't get regulated into the ground, companies will ban it into the ground. So I don't know. I'm still watching it and looking. If I see anything big, I'm going to bring it up. So, all right, let's talk about something. Yes, you need open source people in there. You need people like Hugging Face in there. And I think actually energy systems that are like I'm trying to say this in a way that's outside of the US because I was going to say like OSHA regulated, but in jobs that are like OSHA regulated, which are like OSHA regulations even go to like an office, but like in factories and stuff, they have a lot of regulations to keep people safe. And what I was trying to get at is if it is a job that is very much that AI is in a mistake of the AI could cost lives, the AI should be banned. I think right now we can change that law in the future, but that's a good law to make right now. It can't be in the critical path to cause failures that would cause people life-threatening things. Just turn the dial to eventually. 20 out of 10. Yeah. I agree. The current level of AI, this is where I'm really struggling with things like this. It's doing the work of 250 people, or this one. These are vague numbers. All right, small rant. This is the exact same thing that happens. This is the exact same thing that happens with work from home. You have these people that put out a metric that's unverifiable, that's completely unverifiable. They'll be like, oh, I just want to get the creativity back. please sit with me and tell me how you measured creativity and understand that your employees are less creative when working from home. Now, if you wanted to come to and tell me that some people don't work from home well, absolutely. There will be people that will tell you they don't work from home well. A lot of engineers are introverts, and I would love to work from an office 1 or 2 days a week, but the really get stuff done days, I get way more done when I'm working from home. Yeah, just anyways, you cannot use an unverifiable thing. So for this example, this a thing that usually takes 8 to 10 weeks was completed in a few days writing code. Well, if it was already completed, and so you had a one-to-one comparison, then you already had it, and it wouldn't have taken you any time, and it would have taken you only a few days to repeat your work anyhow. The AI doesn't have anything to do with it. But if it was a new problem, then you can't say that you would have usually completed in 8 to 10 weeks because it was a new problem. You have no idea. Yeah, and absolutely, Russell. Yeah, the companies that talk about missing the water cool innovation, so you're and leaving the future of your business to chance meeting at a water cooler. I 100% agree. And you know what? You don't even have to miss the water cooler sessions because I have worked remotely and have had many water cooler sessions. You have an idea and you're like, "Hey, you want to jump on a voice chat?" Now, this should be encouraged. If you have an idea, you should seek some people out and talk to them about it. And we also do lunches together sometimes. Although we usually eat and then have our lunchtime together. But like, you can still do these types of things. You just can't have them by the water cooler, the actual water cooler. So yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like these people are just saying things, and it annoys me because they don't state something that you can actually measure. If they were like, here's a chart and our productivity is down. Okay. Well, maybe you have a bunch of employees that don't work remotely well. Or you don't do remote work well. You don't encourage it. You don't actually have the equipment. You don't make the practices and policies to support it well. And so it's not working. Yeah. But unfortunately, every single time, it's this vague crap. Yeah, have daily coffee breaks where anybody. I have things on my calendar that I go to. They're in fact I call them Merrick's office hours, but people come and we chat. It's whatever. If you want to come and talk to me, great. If you want to come and talk to other people, there's like 5 of us that join 3 times a week. And most of the time we talk about work. Anyways, that really annoys me because, again, at least give us some real data you can measure. Or I don't know, do all CEOs just go off of gut? Is that like, that's kind of what I feel is like almost every single CEO just like goes with their gut. I think there's some people that really struggle with the face to face and or with remote. I think that is a valid thing that some people don't do as well. And if that's your thing, if you're saying, hey, this group of people doesn't do very well, that's a thing. And now I think that there's ways to support them and to help them learn to do okay with it if you need to. Because one of the biggest superpowers of remote working is usually you have to think of your talent, your employees, as without remote, you have to think about what you have near you. So you're limited by what resources you have near you. You could think of it as water. The purity of your water and how much of it, the quantity of your water, is where you built your factory. And you have to think about that before building a factory. And with remote work, that starts to erode that concept. You can pick the right people for the job, not just the people that are close by, which is what you end up having a lot of the time. Um, sorry, you got me on this rant. I blame you. All right, so let's talk about WebAssembly. Oh, I'm going to rant when I get to Rust news. I like this article. This article was about a group of people that tried something and failed and wrote about how they failed and how you could learn. It also goes into what WebAssembly is at this point and what it's not at this point. And so basically what they were trying to do was use WebAssembly for microservices and to see how it would work. Because, you know, we have things like Blazor and what's that Google one, Flutter, that, you know, are kind of doing pretty well, in my opinion. I'm not saying that they're the perfect or going to take over the world, but they're doing pretty well. And so this goes into let's do Kubernetes stuff with Wasm. And they had some pretty good failures, but I would say that everyone has learned from it. So I would go read it if you guys are interested in Wasm. Yeah, I think it was pretty good. Something that you guys should find completely terrifying, TikTok says Oracle has begun reviewing its source code. So TikTok, ByteDance, is on track with its undertaking to have all US user data hosted and overseen by Oracle. Could you pick one better shady company to oversee US data? It doesn't surprise me to the fact that Oracle, of all companies, ExxonMobil. Okay. So I'm sorry, not ExxonMobil, not Experian either. Third worst, Equifax, not ExxonMobil, not Experian. Fourth worst people to have your data. Good job. I just found that hilarious. Let's talk about Kelsey Hightower on how Kubernetes, Kelsey Hightower's word, hopefully Kubernetes doesn't exist in the next 10 years. Maybe he said 20 years. If you don't know who Kelsey Hightower is, I generally like the dude pretty much. He has a lot of good insights and whatnot. But if we're still talking about Kubernetes in 20 years from now, that would be a sad moment in tech because we didn't come up with any better ideas. And basically what he's saying is tech should continue to move forward. He's made his career out of Kubernetes, but that doesn't mean that there's not room for a better thing like Project Legion. It just means that this is our innovation and we're going to continue to build off of it. GPUs 20 years ago aren't anything like GPUs today. At all. So, that was all he was saying. I saw some people like hyping this up, like that he was like, oh, it's going to be dead in 20 years. That's not what he was saying at all. He's saying that everyone will switch to Nomad and then realize that Legion is awesome, but they didn't switch to it, so it will die out and everybody will use Nomad. And I'll be sad. It's okay. All right, I'm going to link this here. But yeah, anyways, I saw some people on some social medias talking about how Kelsey Hightower said that it was going away or shouldn't be around, and that's not what he was saying. I mean, he was in theory saying that, but he's also saying that, you know, before KVM, it was a different virtualization platform, and these things evolve and they continue to move forward, and people innovate on these spaces, and Kubernetes was the first and kind of crappy one at what it did. And, you know, to be honest, Swarm and Nomad are probably better implementations of a scheduler. The community around Kubernetes is what makes it so powerful and there, because it was the first to do what it did. So I think, you know, are there things that Kubernetes could do differently? Yes. Could they do it without huge breaking changes? Probably not. And is there a reason to? Probably not. Again, yeah. Anyways. All right. Risk Yeah, I posted this link. The launch of Risk 5 Fundamentals course. I think this is interesting. I haven't generally liked the Linux Foundation training, but I'm really interested in learning and understanding the risk architecture better and processors in general. So I'm interested in learning more about this. It's going to talk about the risk instruction set and a whole bunch of different things like that, including the assembly language for Risk 5 and writing Risk 5 assembly code and debugging it. So I think that sounds really interesting and cool. So I might end up taking this. I don't know. I think it sounds pretty cool. Then maybe I can make free YouTube videos. All right, let's talk about Rust. Now, if you remember October 6th, 2022, there was a governance update from Rust, and it read something like this. As part of ongoing work on governance, Rust leadership jointly established a group leadership chat consisting of the core team, leads of all teams on the governance page, the moderation team, and the project directors of the Rust Foundation board. This group has been serving as an interim, keyword interim, governing body while efforts to establish the next evolution of Rust-wide project governance are underway. Now, I'm going to come out with maybe that's here, by the way. I was just reading it. I wasn't paraphrasing. There you go. If you want to read this, and this is important for my comments in a little bit. This is probably going to be my spiciest take on something. I love the language Rust. I love it. The Rust Federation, the board of the Rust Federation, the interim leadership should probably just step down. And I mean, the Rust Federation needs to also have its leadership step down. It's okay when mistakes are made. The fact that mistakes are made over and over and over again is the problem that this is not okay. Now we're going to get into what happened. We're going to get into what happened exactly this last time. But the fact that I have to specify this last time is probably the bigger problem. It's probably the bigger problem. That the fact is that the time before this was only a month ago. And the time before that was only 6 months prior. And the time before that was 3 months prior to that. And that's when their entire moderation team quit because the core team was unmoderable. So after that incident, the core team became part of this interim governing body. Now, I dearly love the Rust language, but this has got to stop. It's tiring because I put out work, just like Kubernetes. I put out work to try to help people with both of those platforms. Rust and Kubernetes are probably my biggest topics that I talk on. I talk about other things like microservices and whatnot, but for all intents and purposes, I work very hard to try to get people involved and learning these languages and making them a big deal. And now, while I don't sit on the moderation team, and I don't sit on a leadership team on the Rust Federation either, that doesn't mean it doesn't reflect on me. And it doesn't mean that it reflects on my desire to encourage people to get a part of the community. Me encouraging somebody to get into a community that I think is going to implode any one of these days that hurts. And when a real fork of Rust comes out, I think that the community will be too fractured. I actually think that forking the project, while a viable solution, will fracture the community because you'll have half of them stay on the Rust project and half of them on Krabby minus minus. Now, let's talk about what happened. There's this blog post, Why I Left Rust. There's a lot of speculation about why I left Rust yesterday, so I want to set the record straight with this post. Now, if you don't know, this is JT. JT, he stopped watching my YouTube videos, which is a shame. He stopped watching but he's done a lot for Rust. Now, why is JT quitting? That's a good question, because this didn't even happen to JT. What happened was with Gene. I don't know how to pronounce Gene's last name, so we'll just say Gene. It's like it's like Hey, but as a system D process. Hade. It's probably Hade, I think. Anyways, Gene. So Gene actually does a lot of cool work. And one of the things I want to point out is what Gene was going to give a thing on. So this is a blog post that is some pretty powerful stuff. Also, really cool. You should read. It talks about CRAB. Maybe it could be called CRAB. Okay, we need to stop. This is a fantastic exploration. We'll call it exploration into reflection in a language like Rust. Now, there's a chance that this would never get accepted into the core language or anything like that, but it's a lot of these experiments that give us things like async and await, and give us things like the macros that we have today that we love. So there is also a possibility that something magical would come from this as well. This is fantastic work at a language level that I could only ever dream to obtain. Yeah. Long article, go read it, have fun. And what does this have to do? Well, this interim leadership group, the one that we talked about here. Interim means short term, but it's been, what? Over 6 months? 6 months now? 6 months. For potential keynote speakers for the Rust conference. Gene was proposed by a couple of people, and Gene was accepted. Now, Gene has done a lot of work. I looked up some of Gene Hade's stuff, and Gene Hade has done a lot of stuff all the way back to the dark ages of C, and has a ton of knowledge. Now, what happened was he had a spicy take. I was looking for his spicy take on something bad he said about a couple of people had strong opinions, discomfort against Gene Hade being selected as a keynote speaker. It was because of Gene Hade's blog post on reflection in Rust. So I don't know if it's this one or another one. I don't know. The thing is, if you do this, so what happened was he was asked to be a keynote speaker. And then they're like, no, we can't have him as a keynote speaker. But they already asked him to be a keynote speaker. And so they demoted him from a keynote, something that it seems like from his past work is right online, to being just off to the side, kind of in the corner, with like less whatnot. But anyways, the problem was that he was already given the keynote speak. I have looked, and I have not found one case of this. I have not found one case of a speaker. I mean, okay, granted, I only Googled for like 20 minutes and then I asked ChatGPT. So from that, I have not found another case. Now, I'm not saying there's not reason. They could go off and do something horrendous, and then you're like, yeah, not having that. But you would be upfront with it. Nobody has given a reason why he was demoted as a keynote speaker. And worst case, if this is true, because he has an idea that you're uncomfortable with, reflection in Rust, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. You need to experiment with him because he was trying to do zero cost reflection in Rust, meaning it's maybe not as powerful as a fully managed language's reflection is going to be, but there was a possibility of some self introspection of the Rust language that would hopefully have zero cost. I think the biggest problem with this, okay, besides being turds, besides just being complete turds, because this is a turd move. Even if you invited somebody and then later realized you didn't like all of their ideas, too late. Don't be the bigger person and just don't be a turd. But the bigger problem that I have with this is if your discomfort wasn't because he was a horrible person, but because they, in fact, had a different opinion about a language's capability. That's like saying, you won't invite me to speak anymore because you found out that I played video games on a Windows PC and I didn't just do it all on Arch Linux. That would disqualify me from speaking at Arch because I like gaming on Windows. Is it possible to game on Arch? Absolutely. I game on Windows. Go ahead, uninvite me. But the problem is, like, it's even worse than that. I feel like this actually is a horrible precedent that they set. Barring we downgraded you from a keynote to a off in the side room speaking with somebody with, I almost said 100 years of experience. I don't think they're 100 years old at all. But effectively, they know more than I would in 100 years. That is what it is. For having an idea about a language or the capabilities of a language. I think the precedent, I think that's actually maybe what's hurting me more and why I would say that the Rust governance interim governing body needs to step down. Maybe, unfortunately, maybe there's some good people on that body, but if you have no ability to do anything, and I think that actually comes down to why I left. Some people were talking about, oh, you shouldn't leave because you're one of the good ones. Probably. But obviously, he wasn't able to do anything. He was powerless. And if you're at that place, one of the most powerful things you can do is to walk away. So JT walking away is one of the most powerful tools he has at his disposal. Now, it's one of the most resolute as well. Maybe not the first good step, but it seems like this is a problem for Rust. We can go back over the last 2 years and talk about 4 or 5 incidences that should never happen. I think it's time for the Rust Federation to step down. Because it makes it difficult for me to make YouTube videos when they do that. It really does. I love Rust. I don't think that there's a more expressive language. I don't think that there's a more succinct way to write an application. I absolutely love Rust. Just about anybody that knows me will tell you that that's my stance on it. But this garbage, this crap is not... last time, and I've taken this approach every single time, is, I gave good feedback. I gave constructive feedback of why their policies were garbage on their copyright for Rust. I gave good constructive feedback. You can look up my posts on the whole moderation team leaving. I even actually volunteered to be on their moderation team going forward, but I had probably some of the requirements that they did not appreciate about the ability to moderate the core team and to have stuff that was not opaque. Basically, this interim leadership team has no governance, and I wouldn't have stood for that. So obviously, I was not picked. I haven't done a whole lot in the Rust community, so that's fair. But I'm starting to feel like JT. I'm starting to feel where giving this constructive feedback isn't helping them. So I don't know what to do. Well, you should put it forth of no confidence. Can we do that? Can we put forth a vote of no confidence in the entire interim staff leadership team? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I honestly don't. I'm going to make a video because we can fork. We can fork the project. I don't know. It's opaque though, Russell. That's the problem. Was it? Nobody really knows. There's whispering. A couple team members. I don't know. I don't know. Nobody has said why. What was so egregious that he goes by the PhD. So if you're looking up these articles, and you see like it says the PhD, I believe up here, the PhD that's what he goes by online. If it was this, I mean, great. Tell us why it was so egregious. Have some transparency. You can read. There's some conversations here. Unfortunately, some people were like, "Oh, you shouldn't have left." I don't know. Point 8, a person in the leadership team. Then I don't know. I'm assuming I trust JT, but I don't even know that JT knows about the leadership, the interim leadership team, or has all the inner workings. So I believe that JT believes that it was a single person without taking a vote from the interim leadership group. If this is happening, they should kick him. Yeah, easy. But I don't know. So in my opinion, if there was an interim leadership team, but the interim leadership team hasn't kicked this person. Let's call this A person. Person A. If person A actually did this, went behind the back, I'm being serious. If person A went behind the back of the leadership team without taking any vote from the leadership team and requested the RustConf leadership to remove a person, that person should be off now. And the Rust Federation should be making a public apology and stating about how that person has been let go. So I guess this is my problem, is even if it was solely a single person that did this, the Rust Federation is still not taking the responsibility they need to. JT is. I think I would encourage JT to fight the good fight. I understand his. I feel like JT feels powerless. I feel like if you read through all of this, I don't know if um, all they can do now is apologize, get down on their knees, and beg for JT and Gene to come back. They're not going to. I think that it sounds like the communication in Rust interim leadership team is abysmal, absolutely abysmal. Yeah, no, it can be difficult. You're right. You're right. The knee jerk could be a knee jerk. Knee jerk reactions are usually wrong. In my experience, every single time I make them, I regret them. I get where he was coming from though. Yeah, 100% hindsight is 2020. And so it's very difficult in the moment, and I feel like this has been building up from all the other things that happen. So this isn't the only thing that JT has had to live through with these people. And I keep hoping. I don't know, because I feel like actually forking it, like putting out a call to like the Primogen and JT and be like, let's just make a hard fork and go with it and get Gene on there as well. I don't know that that's a good way of going about it either. I feel like at best you divide the community in half, and you have half the people to work with. So you have half the size of a community that you could. So I feel like that's a bad call. So I don't know. I think something needs to happen. I don't have any more things to rant. I really think that everybody on the interim leadership team that knew about it and didn't do anything or hasn't done anything yet needs to be replaced. They're hurting Rust. They're literally hurting Rust adoption. Yeah, it's not great for Rust. And I will always say that making mistakes is the way we learn. You have to learn from them, though. You have to stop doing them. This is like a conversation I've had with my 10-year-old son. Like, yeah, mistakes are a great way to learn. If you learned, you'd stop doing the mistake. Like, that's the whole thing. Your communication is abysmal. Interim leadership team, fix it. If this is a single person in the leadership team, why are they on the leadership team? This does not seem like a good leadership person. A person that will just do things on their own for the whole community. Not a good leadership team. I mean, it's worse than just the perspective. Like, it gives people pause. Because you invest a lot to learn a language. But not only does it give bad perspective, just bad PR, but it artificially reduces the size of your community and the things that you can do in a community. Like, do we need better WebAssembly libraries? Yeah, use fine, but I mean, it's a first go at something. To have more of that, we need a bigger community. Do we have do we have something like BuildKit? There's actually absolutely nothing like BuildKit in Rust. Doesn't exist. Can I say that? Well, that's why I call them the Rust Federation. I guess dictatorship is probably better. The Rust dictatorship. They can trademark that too. I'll let them have that one. I don't know. I've just been having a difficult time with it. The People's Republic of Rust. The PPR. Wait, is that what our fork is? The PPR? Oh, okay. That's North Rust. So we're South Rust. Um, hmm. But you know, I always said like the last time this happened, the last time we had this conversation, I wasn't worried because we'd give constructive feedback, and you know they would learn from this. They would do better communication. They would do one of the things that made the last thing horrible is the whole trademark thing. The whole thing of that actually was implemented without the core interim team's knowledge. So that whole debacle came, and there was people from the interim core team, the interim whatever it was called, I forgot, the governance team, um, that didn't know, didn't review it before it was posted. People from the core team. I know that for a fact because there was a whole post of the people that were like, I've never seen this. And they were like the core developers of the Rust project. And so it just shows how dysfunctional they are again and again and again. I don't know. I think forking it's bad. I don't want us to fork it. But I really think that they need to change. And I want to make a video. I don't know how to make the video. I don't know how to word it in a way that's most constructive. I want a good outcome. I want a constructive outcome. But this can't this can't be happening. Even if this is a knee-jerk reaction, even if this isn't the overall best thing that JT could do, the reason this is happening is because of incompetence on the core team or on the interim leadership team. I don't know. Doesn't the Rust Foundation have a lot of money? I thought it was like pretty well funded. Who knows of who Rebecca is? That might be true. I actually don't know who their CEO is. I'm a horrible person. I don't know. She might be great. I don't actually know who Rebecca is. So if she's great, great. I don't know. But Rebecca, as the only paid member, you need to get your crap together. Or the Rust Foundations. If you're actually paid to do that. It's just sad and discouraging. I think that's the biggest part, is because I don't even care if they're paid or not. Like, that's not how you treat people, especially if you're trying to make this a thing. Um, Or that, yeah. Pay everybody and then hold them accountable. Yeah. So the Rust Foundation has an annual budget of $1 million from sponsors from this Reddit post. It might be really hard to wrangle people. You're right. That aren't paid. They'll do what they want because what are you going to do? You're not paid. Yeah. You maybe that's really difficult. I mean I could see how that would be really difficult. I think I would probably kick them out. They're not paid, but that doesn't mean they get to be part of the core team, the interim leadership team. Whether you're paid or not, you can't cause us more trouble than. Hey, what does that say about me? I work for free a lot. What are you saying about me? What are you saying about me? I don't work for free. If you count ads, I make like $2.50 a month. Not free. You could fire me, and I probably would be a little sad, but oh, it says that I can afford to do it. You're right. You are 100% right. I can afford to do what I'm doing. Right. Yeah, no, and it also means like, sometimes those people don't care what your opinion are either. I'm a little different than that. Maybe that's why I'm not those people. But yeah. Anyways, that's it for me. I am generally downtrodden, disheartened by this. I do really like. I'm supposed to be editing my Rust video tonight that I recorded last night, and it's like, do I really want to do that, or do I want to do something with Kubernetes? I don't know. I told you I was done with Tailwind. Did you not get that memo where I was like, this is garbage, where I made this dashboard and it looked like garbage. It looked literally like somebody puked in a file. And then it was horrible. And maybe I write bad Tailwind, but I literally don't have Tailwind in the project anymore. Now I think Monta said he wanted to help with the UI, so he might write some Tailwind. So there might be Tailwind, but I'm done. I'm not using it anymore. Garbage. Next week will be a Tailwind stream. I don't have very many viewers. I don't know that I can afford to do Tailwind streams. I don't know about that. We'll see. We'll see how this happens. They shouldn't do a knee-jerk reaction, but they should work quickly to work this out, and hopefully they do. I really like Rust. I think that it as a language has a way of going very far. It solves a lot of problems. It takes a little getting used to. Like, it's a little more finicky about compiling, but the thing is, when it does compile, you can have fairly good confidence that it's fairly well written. You can write bad Rust, don't get me wrong, but like, no other language have I had so much confidence in things that actually compile. Not perfect confidence. Obviously, it still has problems, but yeah. And usually, these languages gets a little more terse when they're a little bit more, I'm gonna say, low level. And the great thing about Rust is it's really not that terse either. Like I actually think you can write less code in Rust than you can some of these higher level languages, just with its match and its enums. Its enums. I know I did only a quick tutorial on their enums, but their enums are so powerful. Create a second YouTube account to follow my first YouTube account and put snarky comments in my YouTube videos. I like it. I like it. Despite being actively hunted by the Rust dictatorship for free Rust classes. I'm never going to get to speak. And the worst part is, because I've said this and because I'm open with this opinion, I know for certain that I can never speak at a Rust conference, which I actually would love to speak at a Rust conference. I would love to go and speak about helping people get into Rust. Would love to do it, but I can't do it anymore. Maybe we'll have to make my own conference. The not associated with Rust conference. That's what I'm going to do. The not associated with Rust conference. It's going to be huge. We're going to have people that have new ideas. We're going to have people that go to JavaScript meetup. That's actually the one thing that I hate about where I live. If I'm going to be honest, the one thing that I hate about where I live is I have JavaScript developers nearby. And that's about the only people. There's a lot of web developers and Microsoft developers. There's like a lot of Microsoft and because it's like businesses. I don't live in Silicon Valley, and so it does make some of these local meetups a little bit more difficult. But refuse to let them shoot me out the door. Oh, you probably do worse to me than that. They trail me home. You know those JavaScript developers. Anyways, I will let you guys get going. That's all. I'm exhausted by this because I really do take it. I don't take it personally, but it's something that has kind of been on my mind all week. So, oh, get the Microsoft. I like it. Hey, look, Microsoft is using Rust a little bit. Let me show you how. Have a great weekend. Thanks for joining. I love hanging out with you all. So have a fantastic weekend or week. And I might stream a little tomorrow because I'm going to be working on my cloud because I have the day off. So I might stream like a midday stream. So we'll see. Yeah, yes. AWS. Man, they had some amazing Rust developers. What a fail. What a fail. What a fail. That boggles my mind still. Good job. Good job, AWS. You and the Rust Foundation should get along just fine. Just fine. Go have tea together.